Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome on in to the Full Court Press. Jason Walker here with Eric Frandsen on 106.9 FM, 1390 AM The Fan, streaming online at 1069thefan.com and on the 106.9 The Fan mobile app. Also streaming live on YouTube. Say hello to the YouTube audience. He'll wave to the camera. Been live for a couple of days now. We're moving on into the future.
Yeah,
So,
adding new ways to punish yourself for wanting to find out about what's going on in sports.
check out the Fan KLGN on YouTube. You can watch us live along with listening to us. Again, many ways to listen to us for a long time. On the mobile app, on the website, wherever you get your podcasts. Many ways to listen live or after the fact. We welcome you all in. And those of you who want to join the show, you can do so via the Young Power Sports of Logan text line, 435-339-0321. That's the number you can text in. Chime in on any of the topics that we're going over today. We're going to talk Mountain West men's basketball, a little NBA, a few NBA things that we didn't get to yesterday, while we focus a little bit more on the Jazz and them basically sending Yusuf Nurkic to go get surgery on his nose. He could have played through it, but they're rushing guys into season-ending surgery. Him and Jaren Jackson Jr. Of course, there's also another injury, season-ending injury. This one a little bit more chaotic and not
Maybe a little nefarious.
Yeah, potentially
not
nefarious.
on Utah's part.
Yeah, Utah not willingly sending this player to have surgery that could be delayed. This one obviously needs to happen now. We'll also talk about the growth of sports in Utah. An interesting piece in The Athletic that came out recently talking about the growth that pro sports is taken in the state of Utah. We've also got hot take or not a take, Eric. We didn't get to it the other day when I put it on the schedule, but we should be able to get to it today. We've also got the stat that blow our minds and our full court press players of the week. Whole lot of things to go over today, Eric.
Yeah, it's a full docket. And of course, we'll love to hear from you as well on any of these topics where you can agree or disagree or share a differing opinion. 435-339-0321. That's the Young Power Sports of Logan text line. We invite you to text in and participate. And if you're listening after the fact or watching this on YouTube after we're not doing this in real time, that's fine. Still send us those texts because we'll see those when we get into the studio and we try to address them the best that we can. But interesting night going on tonight in the Mountain West Conference. We're on the stretch run here of the regular season, and some teams are still trying to boost their resumes and still try to be in the hunt for opportunities. And certainly a couple of those teams, now one of those is involved tonight, and the one is tomorrow facing the Aggies. But it's an interesting schedule tonight. And the most interesting one, I think, is the one that's is the nightcap, 9 o'clock on CBS Sports Network. You've got New Mexico at Nevada. Does Nevada have an encore performance like they did against the Aggies? New Mexico, they were on the ropes against Fresno, but were able to rally late and then hang on and win the game. So could be a really interesting matchup tonight where New Mexico they're in some brackets, but not in all brackets. They're still trying to improve their resume. This is a quad one opportunity for New Mexico. And right now, Nevada favored by only 1.5. So a tight game tonight in the Mountain West Conference.
Yeah, and obviously there's a lot that can go into this. There's the fact that Nevada, for basically the first time all season, has finally managed to put together at least one good performance. You can say great performance in a marquee game. They played on the road for a lot of those. I think when I was noting, last week they were like 0-4 in these marquee games. Basically games against San Diego State, New Mexico, and Utah State. And I think there was one other game. I might have thrown Boise State in there, but they had gone 0-4 in these marquee matchups. Most of those on the road, but still Utah State was able to win on the road at New Mexico. So teams need to be able to win these marquee matchups wherever they're happening. Nevada finally put one together. Can they do it again? This is second place, tied for second place, New Mexico. And, Nevada gets them at home. It's 2 tough games in a row, but it's 2 games at home in a row for Nevada. Can they, win this game? And honestly, if you're an Aggie fan, you should be rooting for Nevada. If you're doing the whole for the good of the conference, you're rooting for New Mexico.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? I've kind of gone back and forth. This is more recently where, generally speaking, we on this program will be trying to do what we can to help promote the conference overall as a whole. Try to get as many teams in the NCAA tournament as possible because it looks great and you get all these extra units and more money coming to the conference, and it looks like it's a better conference when you have more teams going. But lately, I'm to the point where I don't know if I care about that anymore.
Well, you shouldn't.
Because Utah State is leaving the conference. Any extra units that happen this spring do not benefit Utah State, nor San Diego State, or Boise, or any other departing Pac-12 schools. So if it's a one-bid league, okay. And if it's Utah State that does it, great. So I really don't care if there are more teams beyond Utah State that go. I mean, it still looks better if there are more teams involved. Certainly, I would prefer if it's San Diego State.
Yeah, it looks better if it's the Pac-12
into
teams.
the Pac-12 with more recent trip to the NCAA tournament. This is kind of like a situation we saw just the other night with Utah State and Nevada. I don't know that it really matters one way or the other. Certainly for New Mexico, it's about trying to continue to improve their resume to get in. Nevada's not going to get in based on this game. They have to get in if they win on Saturday in early March in Las Vegas. But this helps their chances if they do, or be at least in their consideration. But this is a really big game for New Mexico. Utah State's in a position, we talked about this last night, there are no must-win games for USU on their resume right now, on their schedule, remaining schedule. Like, if they lose some games, they'll still go, but they won't get as favorable a seed. But New Mexico, San Diego State, they still need to get wins, which is a little bit of a concern for tomorrow night. Not that Utah State is, again, in a must-win situation against San Diego State, but the Aztecs and the Lobos are more desperate for trying to build their resumes to get into the field.
Yeah, New Mexico is facing a stretch which is going to make or break their at-large case. They're at Nevada today. It's a quad 1 game. Home against San Diego State. Home against Colorado State. And then at Utah State. So that's 2 quad 1 games that they have in their Final Four with a couple of quad 2, I believe. I don't know if Colorado State's quad 2. I think they're either just in or just out of being quad 2. Oh, well, that being at home, I can't remember exactly. But basically, you have 3 games in that stretch that are solid quality. You win those 3 games. I mean, if you manage to win those 3 games, you probably better beat Colorado State. But say New Mexico ends the season 4-0. And not only does that actually put them, I believe that would just about guarantee them at least a share of the Mountain West title. Might win it for them outright. They kind of control their own destiny for a Mountain West trophy. And in going 4-0, at least in your most optimistic case, that probably puts New Mexico somewhat safely in the tournament.
New Mexico has 2 quad 1 games remaining, the game at Utah State and the game tonight at Nevada. Then they've got 1 quad 2 game when they host San Diego State this Saturday. And then their game to conclude the season against Colorado State is a quad 3 game. So they have a chance to get to 4-4 in quad 1, 8-1 in quad 2. That's not bad.
Yeah. If they end up losing 2 of those 3 quad 1, quad 2 games, that probably cuts them out of the tournament. Barring a run to the conference championship and whatnot. So this is the stretch for New Mexico, because what they do in these final 4 games will trump pretty much whatever they can do in the Mountain West Conference tournament. Again, barring them going all the way and punching their ticket that way. So this is a very crucial stretch for New Mexico. But I think for Nevada, Like right now, you have 3 teams, I think, in the Mountain West that are all generally considered outside the contention bubble, both for the regular season title or for most people's consideration for who's going to win the Mountain West Conference tournament. Because if you asked 1,000 1,000 people who's going to win the Mountain West Conference tournament, you're going to get one of Utah State, San Diego State, and New Mexico. Whatever percentage toward whichever team, I'm not really going to care. But like
there might be a few Grand Canyons in there.
You're going to get about 95+% that say one of those 3 teams.
Yeah.
But there are 3 teams that, and you've mentioned one of them, that are in that, well, could they make a run in the Mountain West tournament? And Grand Canyon, one of those. Nevada's another. And increasingly, funnily enough, Colorado State is a team that's starting to look more and more.
Yeah, don't overlook the Rams.
Yeah.
Look what they did to San Diego State just the other day.
Yeah.
These guys are definitely capable. They've had moments where you think these guys should be doing more with what they have. And they were disappointing for good stretches. But lately, I don't know if this is just a blip on the radar, but it does seem like maybe they're starting to figure a few things out, playing to who they really can be as a team.
Yeah. Now, whether or not Grand Canyon, Nevada, Colorado State, and you can even throw Boise in there as well. I think maybe you had add a 4th team in there, but I lean more towards Grand Canyon, Nevada, and Colorado State. Like whether they can go all the way and win the Mountain West tournament, I still have that pretty much in doubt. But I wouldn't be all that surprised if one of those teams ends up in the championship game. Like Utah State against Colorado State, San Diego State against Nevada. Like however the bracket ends up, turning out which side, all these teams are on. That's something that I think we could see. Where, I mean, heck, New Mexico won the tournament as a 6 seed a while back. So we know these teams can get to the championship game even when they're fairly low down in the standings. So even halfway down the standings. So my point is, for Nevada, this isn't necessarily them getting back into contention. Mathematically, I think they're probably still in it, but they're not necessarily going to be gunning for the regular season title, but this is their chance to ramp up toward the conference tournament and prepare themselves. Everyone is kind of everyone is trying to compare themselves to last year's Colorado State team. Like Colorado State's trying to compare themselves to last year's team, even though I don't think there's a whole lot of similarity there for a number of reasons.
Yeah.
But primarily defense. But everyone wants to be last year, like everyone who isn't one of the contending teams, they all want to be last year's Colorado State team. The team that was mediocre, didn't really do anything impressive for the first half of the season, but then was arguably the best team in the Mountain West for the last half of the season, at least the last half of the conference schedule. So do Nevada, Boise, Colorado State, GCU see themselves as that type of team? The one that will struggle with inconsistencies, but put it together at the right time. This is about the time of the year where we're going to find that out, if that ends up being the case.
Yeah, these are, who are you right now? Are you playing with momentum? Are you playing hurt? Are you playing tired? You started to figure things out? Are you hitting your stride? Nevada kind of had some ups and downs. Colorado's kind of had some ups and downs. But if these teams start to get hot, it could be a really interesting conference tournament where Utah State, San Diego State, New Mexico have been riding on top of the conference all the year long. There are these other teams, and throw Grand Canyon in the mix too, that on any given day can get hot and can make life difficult for their opponents. So while the conference might end up only being a one-bid league, that is a real possibility. I don't think that'll actually come true, but for some have said, it looks like it's a down year in the Mountain West. Well, it's really not that much of a down year. It's just there's a lot of teams kind of beating each other. It's not the top teams just really dominating the rest of the league and stacking wins and improving their net. There's 3 teams in the top 50 and a few teams that are not that far beyond that. So yes, it doesn't have stretches where somebody's been in the top 25 for long stretches. Utah State was in there for a minute. San Diego State has normally been in that mix. Aggies have been in that mix before. New Mexico has been in there before. But this season really hasn't been a team that's been in the national discussion. Just when Utah State started to get there, they fell out. And nobody's been able to consistently be there to become a national story. St. Louis is getting all that attention. Miami, Ohio is getting all that attention as the mid-major Cinderella that people want to talk about. Nobody's talking about teams out of the Mountain West because nobody can consistently stay at the top. They keep losing against each other.
Yeah, and I think the main issue with the Mountain West having a down year, because it is, like it just frankly is. I mean, you can argue that there are good teams, and Coach Calhoun has been vigorously defending the Mountain West, and he believes they can be a multi-bid league, but like the Mountain West is going to max out at 3 teams in the tournament. That is their current maximum. And I don't see any way for them to get more than that, because that's basically, at this point, Utah State and New Mexico finishing out the regular season in such a way that they can both be at large, perform well enough in the conference tournament and end of the regular season, and then you end up with a third team, whoever, pick whoever you want, wins the Mountain West tournament. That's how you get 3. Other than that, it's Utah State plus whoever wins the Mountain West tournament, and that could end up being the same, that could end up being one and the same. Maybe New Mexico gets an at-large bid. That's, you're maxing out at 3. 2 is being somewhat optimistic, just depending on how much you think one of Utah State or New Mexico will win that tournament. So the issue just ends up being that nobody had a good enough non-conference. Because usually the last few years, you've gone into conference play with like 4 teams that are in the at-large discussion. Yeah, that's what it's been for the last 2 years. You'll have 3 that are really comfortable, 1 that's maybe on the bubble, and then like a 5th that's like a little outside. There was 1 year that you had 6 teams in the NCAA tournament. So obviously you were really getting high, but like a lot of that hype will have already kind of happened by the time you reach conference play. If it's not already there, you can't generate more of it.
Yeah, that's a challenge.
In conference play, who you have in the NCAA tournament discussion when conference play starts, that's mainly who it's going to be, because it's it's hard to create your entire resume off of just conference play. If you haven't done it already, you're probably not going to do it. It can happen theoretically, mathematically, it can happen. But where the Mountain West went into conference play with like 3 teams that were probably likely to be in the NCAA tournament or have a run, we're at 3 teams. Honestly, we've probably gone down to 2 now with New Mexico and Utah State.
So last year there were 4 teams that went from the Mountain West, right, into the NCAA tournament.
Yep.
Looking at the Mountain West net rankings, and again, this is not an end-all, be-all, but just for comparisons, this is last year compared to this year where we're at right now. Last year, 4 teams that went, they were all in the top 50. Colorado State was the automatic qualifier. They were at 47. Boise State was 44. New Mexico 42. Utah State 37. There were 7 teams in the top 100 last year. This year, Utah State's at 24. New Mexico 43. San Diego State at 44. So only 3 teams in the top 50. But you have, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 teams in the top 100. So, yeah. So the middle of the conference is still good. It's just that top level that's not quite to that really national discussion level. And you're right. I think that started with what happened in November and December, and not really getting too many premier wins, and so many teams just losing inexplicable games to lower programs. And it stained the resume for the Mountain West that has stuck with them all the way here to the end of February.
Yeah. Before we hit a break, I'm going to need to actually look this up real quick. 2444 asking this question as we head into the break. Who are the best and worst possible 8-seed matchups for USU in the Mountain West Conference tournament, assuming they get the 1 seed? So we'll look into that. We'll also look into bracketology for the Mountain West. So we're going to do some bracketology for the Mountain West tournament, and then we'll look at, for the Mountain West as a whole, their conference, we'll look at bracketology for the NCAA tournament. So we'll have that coming up next here on the Full Court Press. Welcome back in to the Full Court Press. Jason Walker here with Eric Frandsen as we talk Mountain West men's basketball here on 106.9 FM, 1390 AM The Fan, streaming online at 1069thefan.com and on YouTube, where you can see us on the Fan KLGN on YouTube. Eric, one interesting thing that I wanted to get to before we get to the thing that we teased going into the break. And so I do this whole composite rankings thing on Twitter every week.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you look at a variety of different metrics out there.
Yeah. And the thing I thought was interesting is, so you look at the top of the Mountain West, a lot of teams had, I kind of refer to it as contradictory weeks, basically a week where you go 1-1. You had good win, bad loss, or just a win and a loss in general. And seeing the teams that still moved up in the rankings versus ones that moved down. Like, for instance, Nevada beat Utah State. And at the end of that broadcast, they're saying, this is the biggest win for Nevada all year. They went down. They tumbled. Their average rank went down by like 7. The Aggies went up. Despite, I thought they would have dropped a little bit, just partly because if you're in the top 25 or something like that and you lose, there are so many great teams around you that are very likely winning because they're top teams in the country. You just kind of go down automatically because they're just so bundled together. The Aggies still went up. I guess absolutely blowing out Boise State in a quad 2 game meant a little bit more than barely losing a quad 1 road game.
Okay.
New Mexico, kind of the same thing where they, of course, they still went 2-0, I believe, but they, narrowly, only narrowly beat Fresno State. In fact, them going 2-0, they moved up less than Utah State did. San Diego State, let's see, they went 1-1. Well, they went 0-2, so that's why they fell. But, Grand Canyon, I believe they went 1-1. They rose a little bit, but like it was in Boise, I think, where they won and lost, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, they won one game, lost another. Like, there's some teams, it was just kind of weird seeing like how some teams went 1-1 and moved up, and other teams went 1-1 with great wins and moved down.
It went down. Yeah, that's crazy.
It's just kind of the nuance of all these metrics where some teams weren't punished for losing, games, but some teams were punished for losing games or weren't rewarded for winning big games. Like Nevada. Nevada was the biggest thing. And when I saw Utah State had moved up, I started double checking all of my, every part of the spreadsheet. I was like, am I doing this right? Have I been doing this wrong for weeks? Like,
numbers are correct.
Is there something wrong? And no, it turns out they were right. So, back to this text we had going into the break, 2444, asking in relation to the Mountain West Championship, the tournament, assuming that the Aggies get the 1 seed, so we'll make this assumption for now. Who are the best possible 8-9 seed match? Because they'll play the winner of the 8-9 game. So let's first go over who are the most likely teams to end up there. Who are those teams that are like 7 through 10 that, depending on how things shake out, could end up in that 8-9 matchup?
Well, right now, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So Boise State.
It's weird how few of these standings number which place they're in. Because I was doing the same thing looking at KenPom.
So Boise State currently is tied with Colorado State in that 7-8 spot.
Yeah, with Boise having a tiebreaker for the moment, they got the 1 win in the matchup that's played so far. I believe those two teams will play each other in the season regular season finale.
So it's interesting because you have Boise State and Colorado State tied in that 7-8 spot.
Yeah, they're both 8-8.
Then you got Wyoming and Fresno tied in that 9-10 spot.
Yeah,
both at 6-10. So, which combination of those 4 teams? Now, it's going to be Colorado State or Boise. It's going to be Wyoming or Fresno. It's not like it's going to be Wyoming and Fresno. That's unlikely. But certainly the way the Aggies have matched up against Boise, I'd love to see them face them one more time.
Yeah, I think your 2 best bets are going to be Boise and maybe Wyoming. Wyoming and Fresno are interesting because I think on the one hand, Utah State can and probably would blow out both of those teams. I think with Utah State and Wyoming, you have kind of two extremes where Utah State blew out Wyoming at home, and then it was a really tightly contested game on the road. But I think Utah State would ultimately fare really well. Fresno's a tricky team because, I don't know, they always just seem to do well against the Aggies anyway, at least under Vance Wahlberg. So
and look what they did against New Mexico. They had them on the ropes. They had a almost 20-point lead in the first half.
Yeah. I think the one benefit would be you have a team that has basically zero depth.
Yeah.
And they'd be playing second game of a back-to-back.
True.
That's something that could help them because Fresno State, they have often put the scare into teams in the first half, and they always fade down the stretch. Basically, the one time they didn't, they beat UNLV. But they pretty much always fade down the stretch and can't complete the games because they lack depth. They get tired, fatigued, can't keep things up. And with Utah State, you like playing them on the second day of a back-to-back where you've had rest and they don't.
So here's how each of those four teams kind of finished their season. They all have 4 games left. Colorado State hosts Fresno State tonight. They go to San Jose, they go to New Mexico, and then they host Boise. Boise hosts Wyoming tonight, goes to Fresno, hosts San Diego State, goes to Colorado State. Wyoming goes to Boise, hosts Air Force, hosts Nevada, and then goes to San Jose. And then Fresno is at Colorado State, hosts Boise, hosts San Jose, and goes to Grand Canyon. So it looks to me that Colorado State probably has the more challenging way to finish it out between Colorado State and Boise. But I don't know that it gets particularly easier for one over the other because it's a mix of home and road, and the places they have to play are kind of tough, but they do play each other at the end. So that who's in that 8-9 seed may come down to who wins on March 7th.
Yeah. And we'll see if the Aggies are even in that one spot. But yeah, you definitely would like to see Boise with just something about that matchup just really works for the Aggies. As Boise just cannot get it going against Utah State. Colorado State, it's interesting because Utah State has dominated Colorado State for 3 out of the 4 halves that they've played against each other. There was one half where Colorado State kept it real close, bothered the Aggies, caused some problems, but in 3 out of those 4, Utah State was just completely unbothered. So it's actually kind of weird that it may almost be a better matchup for the Aggies against the potential 8 seed in that matchup, where they've seemed to show a bit more of struggles against Fresno State, and at least one game against Wyoming, where again, out of Boise and Colorado State, out of 4 games, 8 halves of basketball, or however much that adds up to, there's only one half between those, 4 games where they've been bothered by either the Broncos or the Rams.
Yeah, I'd say that Wyoming probably has a better shot of finishing at the 9 spot. Colorado State, Boise, I don't know. I mean, it's about a coin flip there who ends up in the 8 spot because one of those is going to move up to the 7. But of all that, Utah State's played well against any of those teams. One of those teams did have a really strong half.
Yeah.
One half. Wyoming played the Aggies tough for a good stretch for one of the games, but it's still there's still a lot that's going to move in these standings between the next week and a half here because there's so many close games, so many close positions. San Diego State and New Mexico, they're both 12-4. Nevada and Grand Canyon, they're both 10-6. Boise State and Colorado State, they're both 8-8. Wyoming and Fresno, they're both 6-10. So there's still a lot of movement that's going to happen here over the next 4 games.
Yeah, but I think as long as Utah State stays in the 1 or the 2 seed, you're going to end up with a really favorable, I think, second round, for Utah State, it'd essentially be the first round, but their first game. Because you face
those 4 teams we talked about, the other, whoever's not in the 8-9 is going to be in the 7-10. So it's those same teams that we just discussed.
Yeah, you're talking about the same 4 teams. It just depends on where they fall 7, 8, 9, and 10. So
do the Aggies play at noon, or do they play at 6?
Yeah, the biggest downside of being the 2 seed in that equation ends up coming down to what happens when you get to the end of the Mountain West tournament and the whole thing about playing at 9 p.m. and then having to get up for a 2 p.m. game the next day.
Yeah.
That's the biggest potential downside there for the Aggies. And of course, the other downside is for the 2 seed, it means you didn't win the Mountain West Championship or didn't win it outright, at the very least.
Right, and it means you've got a few, more challenging games on your side of the bracket.
Yeah, especially that 2-3 matchup. Though I think the 4 seed, 4 seed in the bracket is going to be one of San Diego State, Grand Canyon, Nevada.
Yeah,
probably either Grand Canyon or Nevada, to be honest.
Right now,
since
how it would look.
Since the top 3 are 2 games ahead of 4 and 5.
Yeah,
but let's look real quick at some bracketology for the Mountain West. A little bit more interesting, where recently it's been Utah State and nobody else really shows up much, but the bracket matrix, our go-to here, updated games, or all brackets that have been updated through February 23rd. There still are some brackets on here that have not been updated since February 20th, but that's, I think, about 100 of the 112 brackets that are in have updated through Sunday's games, or they were updated on Sunday. So most of, for the Mountain West, all of their games are accounted for in most of these brackets. So for Utah State, last week they had gotten up to a 7 seed. According to the consensus, they are back down to an 8 seed, although they're the first 8 seed. Decently ahead of Iowa and especially SMU and Miami. Like they're still straddling that line between a 7 seed and an 8 seed, but they have fallen a little bit. Their maximum, I believe, is a 6 seed.
Yeah, 6 seed in a few brackets. The lowest is a 9.
Yeah.
But a lot of 7s and 8s. And Utah State was in the 7 seed, and kind of looking at, they keep winning, stacking a few more quad 1 wins, they might be able to slide into that top spot where they get into a 6 seed. But not anymore. 8 seed is probably where you're going to live. If Utah State wins out the regular season and runs through the conference tournament, they should be back in the 7 seed conversation.
Yeah. And I think at this point, the 7 seed probably is where they're going to max out. If they did win out, bracket matrix might project them as a 6, but selection committee puts them down to a 7. So at this point, for Utah State, I'd probably lock them into that 8-9 game. One of the 8-9 matchups. Barring some crazy collapse or them winning out and probably getting a 7 seed. So start studying up on all these teams in the potential 8-9 matchups, because that's who the Aggies are most likely going to end up playing. We've seen a lot of brackets lately. There was the big media one. They gathered a bunch of people together to pretend selection committee, and Utah State ended up in an 8-9 matchup against St. Mary's. And then they would play. And weirdly enough, out of every single time I see the Aggies in an 8-9 matchup, it's always Arizona in the second round. Never anybody else. It's always Arizona. Huh. I don't know if that's a good thing. That's just the thing I've noticed, is that it's always Arizona. So we'll see how that pans out for the Aggies if they end up there. Their last game against a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament didn't go so well.
Yeah,
most of the time it's not going to go well for you.
8-9 spot is tough. I'd rather fall all the way down to 10.
Yeah, your odds of going to the Sweet 16 are higher if you're like a 10 or an 11 seed. I think even a 12 seed. Like the odds of going to the Sweet 16, obviously they start at the highest when you're a 1 seed and they go down predictably, and then you get to 7 and 8, 7, and then 8, it keeps going down, and then at 10, 11 it like spikes back up slightly. Now your odds of winning in the first round are noticeably lower as a 10, 11, 12 seed. But your odds of getting to the Sweet 16 are higher, at least based off of, I say odds. This is based on
trends.
Yeah, old
history.
Basically the historical winning percentages.
Yeah,
that's what these odds are based on essentially. So, yeah, it's kind of weird there. I know we had this conversation last year where the Aggies ended up avoiding that 8-9 matchup, and then they lost in the first round to a good team. So, but aside from Utah State, looking at the rest of bracket matrix, we have another Mountain West team that has made it back into the field, at least the consensus field here, and that is New Mexico. They are the second to last team in the field, where they are in 72 of the 112 brackets. TCU is in 68 of them. So they're, if you call them the last team out of the last 4 in. So New Mexico, after, if they lose that game to Fresno State, they're probably not in a lot of those brackets, or at least they're not in nearly as many. And if they keep going, then they're probably going to secure themselves, maybe even managing to get one of those last 4 byes. But San Diego State, with their recent losses, they are in just 4 of the brackets in all of Bracket Matrix. And I'm trying to see how many of these. I was speculating earlier that I thought it was all the brackets that hadn't been updated of late, but actually most of them are the ones that there's one that hasn't been updated since the weekend, but most of them saw the last week where they lost 2 games and we're like, we still want them in the tournament. And, fair enough. I'm sure you can make an argument. They're on the bubble. But that last week was a killer to San Diego State's, chances of being an at-large team.
Yeah, and if they lose another one,
yeah, if they lose to the Aggies,
lose 3 in a row.
Yeah, well, and it kind of mirrors with Utah State. Neither of the losses from last week. Well, the Colorado State one, kind of would have hurt individually, but if you say, if you're San Diego State, does losing to Grand Canyon really kill you on its own? Not really. Getting swept by them really hurt. Losing at home doesn't feel good. Does losing at Colorado State kill your at-large chances? Well, again, not alone, but it was the Grand Canyon and Colorado State going 0-2 within a week. Would losing to Utah State on its own really hurt San Diego State? Not really. It's a quad 1 home game. So, it's a quad 1 game. You lose a quad 1 game. It's you lost to a good team. But it's all of those games together that kills their at-large hopes.
Yeah.
Much like we had that conversation with the Aggies, there's not a game for the Aggies that by itself sinks or raises Utah State's seed line, all those different things with the NCAA tournament and their at-large bid. You have to combine them, put them all together. Winning their last 4 games of the regular season, that has a really good cumulative effect.
Right.
Losing all 4 of those games has a really bad cumulative effect,
right.
where none of the individual ones help or hurt.
Yeah, the committee wants to put together a field of teams that are playing good basketball. So who's on an upswing right now? Who's on an uptick? Who's got momentum coming into this tournament? If somebody won a lot of games in November and December, but they've played like garbage in February, do we really want them in the field? Because they're not trending right. So they tend to lean to who's playing good basketball. And Utah State was waffling a little bit last year at this time. They're doing better, but will they fall into a trap where they lose a couple of games back to back and start to stumble into the conference tournament? So this is kind of an important time. I'm not going to say it's a critical time for Utah State because they're beyond that, but it's an important time for Utah State to continue to play good basketball, to finish out the season, and to have some momentum going into the conference tournament.
Yeah. The Aggies are favored in all 4 of their remaining games. Of course, I noticed this with San Diego State. They're underdogs in each of their next 3 games, according to Ken Palm. 1-point home underdog to Utah State, and then 4-point and 1-point underdogs, at New Mexico and at Boise State. Then they're favored to win by 12 at home against UNLV. Kind of an interesting stretch for them. Maybe a very difficult stretch for the Aztecs. Anyway, we got to take a break. We're a little overdue. We're going to talk a little bit more Mountain West. We're going to talk about something that actually doesn't impact the Aggies at all. Mountain West football schedule for 2026.
Keeps getting tweaked.
Yeah, it keeps getting tweaked.
And they're still not done.
Yeah, they're still not done. There's still a few more things to go over. So we'll jump into that next here on the Full Court Press. The Best of Northern Utah contest is back, presented by Alpine Cleaning and Restoration. Nominate your favorite businesses, the places you love, the people you trust. Who's the hidden gem more people should know about, the businesses you recommend without even thinking about it, the local legend who's been serving this community for decades? This is how we recognize the best businesses in town. Nominate them now at bestofnorthernutah.com. Eric, do you want to sing the jingle for us?
Best of Northern Utah.
There we go.
How was that?
Absolutely gorgeous. So
I don't know if I'd say that.
we're talking, I suddenly forgot what we were talking about. Oh, yeah, Mountain West scheduling. They announced their 2026 football schedule, the matchups, not dates or, to my knowledge, even like the weeks in which these games will be happening. It's just who you will play at home, who you will play on the road, adjusted for the fact that North Dakota State is now in the mix here. And those of you watching on YouTube, I put the graphic up there, but those who are listening, you can pull it up on social media.
Imagine it in your mind.
Imagine it in your mind, this big old graphic with all these different teams. And obviously, no Utah State is there leaving for the Pac-12. We've gone over their schedule. Heck, I even did some analysis on how difficult their schedule will be in comparison to last year. But, looking at your average Mountain West team, these matchups look good for them?
Well, first of all, I understand they needed to adjust this because they'd kind of released something before, but now North Dakota State is in the mix. They need to readjust and reframe their whole scheduling philosophy. So I get that they needed to do an adjustment. But the Pac-12 not only has their conference schedule out, like who you're going to face home or away, you know the dates exactly when these games are going to happen. You may not know the times yet, so let's get the TV partners involved. The Mountain West doesn't even know the dates. Like for North Dakota State, new entry into the conference. They get to host Nevada, Northern Illinois, UTEP, and Wyoming, while they go on the road to Air Force, Hawaii, New Mexico, and UNLV. And then you've got other new teams like Northern Illinois and UTEP. Hawaii, you always face Hawaii, but now they're a full member. But so it's there's changes in the Mountain West for this upcoming year. And so there are all these teams that are there. You won't face everybody. So on some teams on your schedule, you won't face in a season in the Mountain West.
One thing I thought was a little interesting, and I haven't dived through all this to nail this down, specifically, but was looking at North Dakota State. You look at the two teams that are closest to them geographically. It's Wyoming and Northern Illinois. They get them both at home. I don't know. I don't know if that just seemed interesting where they're having them both at home. Get those teams. Of course, then they have to go all the way to Hawaii. Like that's kind of insane.
Well, Hawaii has to travel to Northern Illinois.
Yeah. They have to go to Northern Illinois, to Wyoming, all the way. Like 3 of the teams they're facing on the road are like 3 of the 4 teams that are like the furthest away from Hawaii. As if, basically everyone in the Mountain West isn't forever and a day away from Hawaii,
Yeah,
but still.
just added measure. Yeah, Hawaii has to travel to Reno. You have to travel to DeKalb, Illinois. To travel to El Paso, Texas, and Laramie, Wyoming.
That is
poor Hawaii.
That is like the 4 worst places you can go.
It's like some of those, like Nevada, Reno, that's probably the easiest to get in and out of.
Yeah.
Not just because geographically it's closest, but it's not hard to get into Reno.
Yeah.
All these other places are hard to get into.
Now, just flying to Chicago, Northern Illinois, part of that mighty Chicago market,
Yeah.
Clearly, it's very easy to get into, right?
Like halfway, almost literally clear across the country and clear across the ocean, across the country. Then you have to get on a bus. Maybe. I don't know if you can fly into DeKalb if you charter, maybe. But I don't know if they'll charter that far. That's a long charter.
Yeah, we'll see.
So it's kind of funky, but you got 10 teams. They have 8 conference games, so you don't play everybody. The new era of the Mountain West, they've released their football schedule this year, and I'm just happy Utah State doesn't have to make the trip to Hawaii. I'm glad they don't have to travel to some place in the middle of nowhere, Illinois.
They don't have to go to Laramie, North Dakota, Illinois, El Paso.
Yeah.
They gotta pretty much stay they gotta stay west of the Rockies, except for Colorado
Texas State is...
And Texas State.
Yeah, that one's a little bit out there, but...
If Texas State is the worst place you have to travel to in the Pac-12, I think you'll take that.
Yeah.
We got to take a break here. We'll be back after this here on the Full Court Press. Batteries, headlights, wiper blades are all in stock and on sale now at your locally owned Napa Auto Parts locations. Chemical Guys Car Wash and Detailing Kits for only $49.99. Pick up the last bags of Blue Heat Ice Melt at just $10. They got air fresheners, snow scrapers, shop towels, sea foam, and more. Again, it's on sale at your locally owned Napa Auto Parts stores. They got locations from Preston all the way down to Providence. Now, it's time for the portion of our show where we do the stat that blew our minds. We have a fancy little intro bed. We don't have time. We only got about 2 minutes to go here. So, well, let's bring up the stat that blew our mind. Eric, what have you got for us?
It's 79. The number is 79. That's the amount of points that Malad outscored their opponents in the 3A girls basketball tournament here recently. And then looking overall on their season, as I've looked at their overall resume, they lost a couple of games in December, close games, 57 to 50, and then 43 to 39 to Bear Lake and Lehigh, Utah. Outside of that, they've won all these other games. And they've been so dominant, they have won their games and outscored their opponents by nearly 24 points a game on the season. So
pretty good. Dominating
performance by the Malad Dragons.
There we go. Mine has to do with Utah State and their loss to Nevada. And I guess my number is 2 or second, you might say. And that is the loss to Nevada was only the second time in Utah State history in which they made 15 or more three-pointers in a game and lost.
Ooh.
They were 10-1 all time prior to that. The only other game they had lost was actually the game where J.C. Carroll hit 10 three-pointers.
Really?
It was like the school record. Like it was 23 pointers and they lost that game. They scored 60 points on 3-pointers alone. They still lost to New Mexico State. JC hit 10 himself.
Wow.
But that was the only time they had lost. And most of those games where they hit that many threes, they won by wide margins. Some pretty crazy wide margins too. But the Aggies hit 15 3-pointers against the Wolfpack and lost. So just the second time they've ever done that against any team, Division I, Division II, or anything.
Wow, that's a good stat.
So it's pretty crazy for the Aggies. Next hour, we're going to get into the NBA. We'll talk a little about the MVP race. Utah Valley getting a restraining order against the WAC. We'll go to hot take or not a take. We'll also have our full court press players of the week. Stick around on 106.9 FM, 1390 AM The Fan, or streaming live on YouTube. Welcome back in to the Full Court Press. Jason Walker here with Eric Frandsen on 106.9 FM, 1390 AM The Fan. Streaming online at 1069thefan.com and on the 1069 The Fan mobile app. And streaming online on YouTube at the Fan KLGN YouTube account. Of course, also with us, and you could also say from the Fan, but from ESPN, the Fan down in Salt Lake City. We've got Bryce Larson on with us today. How you doing, Bryce?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
We're doing pretty solid.
We're good. You've been a very busy guy following the UVU versus WAC drama. We had you on a few weeks ago when some of this was starting to break loose. Utah Valley's outgoing president has said that she's just not going to pay the $1 million exit fee as Utah Valley exits the WAC, as many other schools are also doing. And the WAC is trying to make it punitive on the school, not allowing the team to appear on their national broadcasts and even threatening to withhold them from the upcoming conference tournament. So from there, it sounds like this battle, this debate, has moved into the legal courtroom off of the basketball courtroom. And so to help us understand where things sit now, because it seems like there were some things filed in court in Texas, but also some things that were being filed in the state of Utah as well.
Yes, so there's two current ongoing lawsuits filed by both sides. The WAC filed a lawsuit in Tarrant County, Texas earlier this month, and UVU, kind of in response, filed their own lawsuit in Utah's 4th District Court just about on the 19th of this month, I believe was the exact date. Along with that, they also filed a motion for a temporary restraining order and a motion for a preliminary injunction. Then they asked the court here in Utah to have an expedited hearing because the Utah Valley indoor track and field team is on its way to the championships right now as we speak. So they needed to get in front of a judge by the 23rd in order to have this temporary restraining order, which only lasts 13 days, granted to them. And as of 4:33 p.m. today, the judge in the 4th District Court, Denise M. Porter, granted that temporary restraining order. So the clock starts. 14 days is how long Utah Valley has now. So a little bit of relief. It is temporary, but on Friday they'll be back in court arguing once again for a preliminary injunction. Now, if they get the preliminary injunction, then that pushes it even further until the litigation is over. So if they win on Friday and get the favorable ruling this coming Friday, that means good news for the rest of Utah Valley athletics to come.
So what does it look like if, Utah Valley gets, they have the temporary restraining order, they get the preliminary injunction? Is there what is it like if Utah Valley, I guess, loses, for lack of a better term? Because say they win these, because we focus kind of on the immediate, track and field going to the championships. You're going to have the WAC conference tournament here in a couple of weeks. That would, I don't know if that would fall within the 14-day restraining order, but like a preliminary injunction. Like, is there a way for Utah Valley to then win in these cases and then lose going forward? And what would that even look like? Would Utah Valley be forced to pay that money back? I'm trying to figure out exactly all the different scenarios that we can end up here with this Utah Valley against the WAC.
Yes, from what I understand, and to make it very clear, I'm not a lawyer, but from what I've learned over the last couple of weeks in covering this and speaking to lawyers that do know these certain things, there's a lower burden of proof that Utah Valley has to reach in order to get a temporary restraining order. When you go for the preliminary injunction, there's a little bit higher burden of proof that you have to reach, so it's going to be a little bit tougher on Friday to be able to prove what they're trying to say. And then going forward, it is still possible to lose these lawsuits. The biggest portion of this is that in a temporary restraining order hearing or a preliminary injunction hearing, what Utah Valley University is trying to prove is irreparable harm, among other things. Irreparable harm that would happen to student athletes, irreparable harm that would happen to the university because they are not allowed to play in the postseason. This is going into the argument of these student athletes are going to be affected because they're not going to be able to play in the NCAA tournament. That's affecting them to be able to make money down the road, to be able to have exposure to hit the transfer portal. All of those things have been argued over the last couple of weeks, and the judge ruled in their favor today.
So as it stands, Utah Valley is on top of the standings in the WAC, and the WAC conference tournament looks like that actually does take place beyond those 13 days, just barely. So if this doesn't happen right now, as it stands, the number one team would not be allowed to participate in its own conference postseason tournament.
That's right. They still need, in order to be able to participate in that tournament in Las Vegas as it stands right now, Utah Valley University has to get the preliminary injunction granted to them by that same judge who will hear those hearings on Friday. From what I understand, from what I've been told, once again, not a lawyer, so this is kind of trying to paint a little bit more of a picture, but when you get a temporary restraining order, it kind of paves the way for a preliminary injunction. Now that the judge understands what's happening here, this is going to be a much longer hearing on Friday. It's scheduled for anywhere from 2 to 4 hours, so it's a long hearing. People are going to be cross-examined. People are going to put it on the stand. This is a legitimate hearing that's going to come up on Friday, but they need that in order to be able to compete in the men's and women's basketball tournaments coming up in March. That is correct.
As you've looked over this case, what has been the biggest kind of argument from the WAC as they try and defend their actions here in shutting out Utah Valley from all this?
Well, there's a couple of different things that have gone on. So in the case that's been put in Tarrant County, Texas, the main argument put forth by the WAC is that Utah Valley owes an exit fee of $1 million and they haven't paid. To put it simply, that's what it is. Utah Valley, in submitting that verified claim here in the state of Utah, claims that there was a 2024 letter that was signed by each of the 7 remaining school presidents that during a meeting in which Utah Valley's representative last year at the WAC tournament was dismissed and then brought back later into that same meeting, that letter was voted to be rescinded by the other remaining members. The representative on hand from Utah Valley University abstained from voting because they said that they didn't know what went on in that meeting after they were dismissed. And they also said that they didn't feel comfortable because it was not the president of the university that was there. A year ago, unfortunately and tragically, President Astra Jimenez's husband passed away, so she was on a sabbatical. She was not available to be in that meeting or a part of any of those types of meetings. So this starts to become very personal, as you can see. So all of this kind of going back and forth. The WAC argues that the rescission of that letter was all according to the bylaws, and Utah Valley University argues, no, that should be a contractual agreement that should have to be taken away by a vote of all 7 members who signed it.
And this is what's interesting here is that Utah Valley is not the only school leaving the WAC, but they appear to be the only school that's being hit with this penalty. How much of that has been part of this discussion? And I know when we spoke a few weeks back, there were some differences, but there are other schools in this state that are part of the WAC, but will not be in the future.
Yes, and that all comes up in the hearings as well, and it has been a big focus of this. Utah Tech and Southern Utah University, they're on their way to the Big Sky Conference the same exact day, July 1st, 2026, coming up this summer as Utah Valley heads to the Big West. And that's exactly the claim of Utah Valley University. They claim and allege that Utah Tech and Southern Utah have not had to pay any exit fees. They have not been taken off of television or broadcasting rights. They have, in fact, been paid by the conference, and Utah Valley alleges that the conference, in their own verified claim, their own lawsuit against the Western Athletic Conference, the one that was filed here in the state of Utah, they are claiming damages of up to $1.3 million from the Western Athletic Conference, including and among other fees as well. So not only is Utah Valley going after the payments that they didn't receive and they claim that others received, they're also going after other damages and more money from the Western Athletic Conference. So the court today in the temporary hearing argument, the judge said she believes that Utah Valley has a legitimate ability to prevail on their claims, and that's why one of the reasons as to why she decided to grant the temporary restraining order.
So if it was just $1 million, you think the school can spring for $1 million, can't they?
Yeah.
But it's the fact that they're also withholding other things. And if I follow you on social media, and if I'm not mistaken, you had some things recently about how the conference didn't even want to really recognize them last year in the tournament. They had to make their own sign to celebrate their own wins.
Yes, I think this has gone beyond just $1 million. Like I said, they are seeking damages of up to $1.3 million, maybe more with lawyers' fees and other things. But I do think that there is a certain pettiness that has gone on behind the scenes with all of this, and that's why both of these two sides don't want to back down on it. I think it has become somewhat personal. There are emails that are out there that are all public files, that there are some things in those emails that are kind of petty. And yeah, I think this goes beyond just $1 million. I think that this is something personal that could be happening behind the scenes in all of this as well.
I want to ask about the kind of situation on the court, I guess, with the WAC, because you've got two Utah schools that are both kind of in command at the top there. Utah Valley, 10-4 in conference play. Utah Tech, 10-5. I know there's a couple of former Aggies on Utah Valley, that there's some Aggie fans that keep an eye on those players, Braden Housley and Isaac Davis. Just what have you seen from those teams as they're battling it out in kind of a reduced WAC, as it's kind of been?
I think that if it comes down to a team from the state of Utah that is going to win it, it'll either be Utah Valley or Utah Tech. I just don't know that Southern Utah has been able to compete at a high level enough to be able to go down and win. But you never know what could happen in March. Teams can get hot. And when you have a double bye system, a team that plays first can win a couple and get hot and get that confidence going. So we'll see what ends up happening. But I do think Utah Valley, obviously the favorite to win the league this year. Utah Tech has come out of nowhere. They have finally, in their Division I era, been and had a winning record, and they are a legitimate threat to win the tournament down in Las Vegas. I think California Baptist is the other team to look out for. Dominique Daniels Jr. was the preseason player of the year in the Western Athletic Conference. He's a legitimate threat. He can score 50 on you. He did it against Utah Valley and Riverside not too long ago. So those are the three teams that I'm looking at, and three teams that very easily could win the conference tournament down in Las Vegas come March.
Well, this is a soap opera playing out in front of our eyes here between an institution and its conference, and certainly Utah State fans know all too well about conference exit fees and legal battles associated with that with the Mountain West. But Bryce Larson is a great follow on social media to find out more about what's going on with this. And you've had some stuff that just within the last 30 minutes or so that broke. So how can fans follow you? Fans of Utah Valley or are interested in what's going on with the WAC, what's the best way for them to follow you or tune in to see what you guys are talking about?
Yeah, you can follow me on X at Larson Sports, LARSON Sports, or we talk about it almost every morning on our radio show, 7 to 10 a.m. on Bryce and Bianucci. It's 103.9 and 98.3 ESPN The Fan. You can also check us out on the Bryce and Bianucci podcast, wherever you get your podcasts as well. I'll be combing through these documents a little bit further, because there have been more documents submitted to the court. And I'm sure there's some more interesting things to come in the next coming days that will all get tweeted out onto Twitter. So make sure you follow me there first and foremost at Larson Sports, LARSON Sports.
They never told me when I was preparing to be a sports journalist that even going into sports, it would include this much sorting through legal documents and lawsuits.
I agree with you. That was the first time I've actually been to court, and it was pretty interesting. There was hundreds of people that were observing the court hearing on Monday. It was fascinating to see, and really compelling arguments being made on both sides. Who thought it could be so interesting sitting in court for hours?
Yeah, some court gets a bad rep for being its potential to be boring, but there are some genuinely interesting court proceedings. As long as you kind of understand what's going on a little bit, that's usually the trick.
So this
No doubt.
this event on Friday, the next phase on Friday, is that in Texas or is that in Utah?
That's here in Utah. It's in front of this exact same judge that just barely issued the temporary restraining order, and that goes for the preliminary injunction. So Utah Valley has a little bit higher of a bar to clear for a preliminary injunction. That's why it's a longer hearing. The judge in the filing at the very end of the hearing on Monday stated she didn't want to hear anything about jurisdictional claims. She didn't want to hear about ongoing lawsuits in Texas. She didn't want to hear, and I think that plays into Utah Valley's favor because the the Western Athletic Conference submitted a motion to dismiss based on jurisdictional claims, saying that she should have no jurisdiction. They said it with the utmost respect, Your Honor. You shouldn't have any jurisdiction over what is happening here. She disagreed with that. So I find that very fascinating and a really interesting premise leading into Friday's hearings.
Yeah, there's a lot of different legal avenues, and it escapes me. I just try and figure out so I always have to, every time we talk about this stuff, it's like, well, we're not lawyers, but this is what we're getting out of it.
Yeah, hey, as long as the athletes get to continue to compete,
yeah,
settle it in the courts so it doesn't affect what's going on the court. That's my biggest thing.
Yeah, if the WAC and Utah Valley want to fight over a few $1 million, yeah, but I want to see these guys play in the conference tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't rob them of that opportunity. And the track and field athletes going to nationals too.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. This is the first time that Grand Canyon hasn't been in the Western Athletic Conference in a long time. And Grand Canyon has won the league over and over and over. This is probably Utah Valley's best opportunity for the first time ever to get to the NCAA tournament. And to see them be robbed of that would be just heartbreaking. And, yeah, it would be awful to see that happen. So hopefully this plays out well in Utah Valley's favor.
All right, we'll definitely be keeping an eye on it. And again, those of you wanting to follow this saga, Bryce Larson, definitely the best person to follow. Been boots on the ground and giving all the updates on the latest. So we'll make sure you keep an eye on your reporting, Bryce. And thank you so much for coming on.
Appreciate you guys. Anytime.
All right, we're going to go
Thanks,
ahead and
Bryce.
go ahead and go to break. And we'll be back after this here on the Full Court Press. Indoor air in our area can be up to 5 times dirtier than outdoor air, especially during the dry winter months. Dry air keeps dust and allergens floating longer, sending them deeper into your lungs and making sickness more likely. Mountain Valley Heating and Air installs high-efficiency steam humidifiers that use 1 gallon of water with no waste to improve air quality. So call 435-753-5170 for a free in-home air quality assessment from Mountain Valley Heating and Air. Many thanks to Bryce Larson from Bryson Bianucci, ESPN, The Fan down in Salt Lake. You know, they do a really good job. I mean, they're pretty much the only people that are covering Utah Valley.
Yeah.
You know, it's a little ways out of our area of influence, but there are other places in Salt Lake that don't give a darn about these other not Utah BYU, basically.
Right. Yeah. They've kind of carved out a little bit of a niche for themselves that way. And man, they're getting the attention they deserve with what they've done to focus on this. And I knew there was a decision that was supposed to be done today, and based on following Bryce, and that it could happen this afternoon. And during the 4:00 hour, he posted that the judge had granted the temporary restraining order, and I messaged him saying, "Hey, can you come on now?" And he's like, "Yeah, absolutely." So we were able to get him on real short notice, as he's been following these court proceedings. And what a weird situation going on with the WAC, because these other schools that are departing are not being treated the same way. It's just really, really petty and childish what the WAC is doing here. They know their conference is crumbling, and they're taking it out on somebody, and it happens to be Utah Valley.
Do they blame Utah Valley for the death of the WAC?
They had to have seen it coming. They were a small conference, and other schools were looking to go. Utah Valley was the first, then others followed.
Well, Grand Canyon left first.
That's true.
Seattle also, leaving.
That's true. They weren't the first. So
they're just kind of the last to actually, and to be honest, from where the WAC was to the Big West, the Utah Valley is going to, it's kind of a lateral move. Now, from the WAC as it stands to the Big West, that is a step up.
Yeah. But
that's more jumping off of a sinking ship and getting onto one that's not sinking. That's kind of what Utah Valley is doing. They're not really moving up. They're just avoiding the demise and falling backward. The way that some of the other teams in the WAC are going to have to deal with. Well, they're now going to be like some United Athletic Conference or something like that.
Yeah, they're supposed to do some kind of a merger or something.
They're getting some teams over in kind of the Southwest.
Kind of a dumb deal. But yeah, Utah Valley's having a great season right now, on top of the standings. They got 2 former Aggies on their roster. Utah Tech, they're having a crazy run
finally
right now.
For once, they're actually doing all right. It's
former
really nice
Skyview player Tanner Davis on that roster and helping out his team.
Yeah, that is where he went.
Yeah, so
it's nice to see him land on his feet in college, especially after the way his senior year ended.
Dallin Grant, does that name sound familiar?
It does. Is he actually playing?
No, he's only played 6 games.
Okay. There's also Cade Potter, who I couldn't remember if he went to Utah Tech or SUU. But there's an Ethan Potter on Utah Tech,
for Utah Tech
that I initially confused with the former Aggie Cade Potter, who actually never played, I think, a second for the Aggies. I think he redshirted and then he transferred. Speaking of transfers, at least a transfer player. I don't know how I was going to segue from this, but 2444 texted this in, I think, before we went to an interview with Bryce Larson, but referencing a clip that I want to play now. Reese Dixon Waters transferred to San Diego State from Southern California back in 2023. So this is his 3rd year with San Diego State. And he was asked earlier this week, actually yesterday is when this video was posted, question he was asked, and his response was kind of interesting, when you go and fact check it. But here's
the question was about really looking at this game tomorrow between Utah State and San Diego State, about trying to still having an opportunity to at least have a share of the conference title, the regular season conference title.
Yeah. So
I didn't know that the question was.
The question was part of the clip. So Reese Dixon is saying, since I've been here, I feel like San Diego State's kind of ran the Mountain West Conference. He added the addendum even before I got here. If he'd mentioned before I got here, San Diego State ran the league, that would be a very accurate statement. Because San Diego State, for several year stretch, was running the league. They won the regular season title twice, at least 3 times in a 4-year span. But Reese Dixon Waters showed up ahead of the 2023-24 season. You know where San Diego State finished at the end of the 2023-24 season in the Mountain West standings? 5th. You know where they finished last year? Granted, Reese Dixon Waters did not play for the team last year, so I ain't going to put anything on him, but we are fact-checking him. You know where the Aztecs finished in the standings at the end of last year?
3rd?
5th.
5th.
I don't know if they were it was Boise State was 4th and San Diego State's 5th. They're both 14-6. I can't remember who won the tiebreaker in that, but 5th or 4th. Where are they at right now? I mean, granted, they do have a chance to, win a share of the Mountain West title, so they're actually kind of living up to that. But as 2444 pointing out, saying you find it funny how he said that, yet, this is from 2444, yet they haven't won a single regular season or conference tournament title in the 2 years he's been with them, this now being his 3rd year. Yeah, they won a bunch of championships before he got there. They kind of started ending when he got here. So it was just kind of funny to fact check where that's like, yeah, we've been running the league since I got here. It's like, no, you haven't.
No, I mean, they're probably the biggest dog name brand, but you can't say that you've been running the conference.
Yeah.
Because that would imply that you're on top and you're winning things and winning conference tournaments and conference regular season championships, and that they haven't done.
Yeah, you can argue Utah.
Not there.
You can argue Utah State's been running the league since Reese Dixon Waters showed up in San Diego State, because Utah State won a Mountain West championship, finished 3rd in the standings last year, and now Utah State is 1st in the standings at the moment. So that certainly was kind of funny from 2444. 5338 texting in here. Saying
nomination.
The 5338 Sports Re-Education Academy and Think Tank official player of the week is easily Jack Hughes of the U.S. Olympic hockey team for burying an overtime goal to clinch the gold medal for the U.S. for the first time since 1980.
Yeah, especially after he was cut right before the 1980 Olympics.
Yeah.
We watched Miracle on Sunday after the U.S. captured gold.
Yeah.
And we're like, we got to watch this movie because my kids had never seen it. So we pulled it up. It was a fun movie, but they're narrowing the roster down from 26 to 20 in the lead up to the 1980 games in Placid, New York, Lake Placid. They scratch out and pull off the tape off the locker room of one Jack Hughes, who was competing to make the 1980 Olympic team, and Jack Hughes, the big moment.
There
on
we
Sunday.
go. It all comes around.
Yes.
He finally made it back onto the team. So one interesting thing, Eric, because I think I saw the headline for this, but I hadn't really read the article fully. But there was an article in The Athletic the other day about the growth of professional sports in Utah, kind of pointing out, well, I mean, you've had the Jazz forever. You've had RSL for the last about 20 years. But you've got a hockey team that just kind of out of left field. It was like suddenly the Arizona Coyotes are in trouble, and then Ryan Smith was like, well, I'll buy him. And then the NHL was like, all right, bet.
Yeah.
And suddenly, in the span of like 4 months, they moved a hockey team from Arizona to Utah. And the Millers are also trying to get a professional baseball team here in Utah as expansion in Major League Baseball is starting to heat up. I mean, you've got 2 leagues that are gunning for expansion, NBA and Major League Baseball, 2 leagues that haven't expanded in a while.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because I know MLS and NHL have been trying to expand for the longest time and have continuously expanded, but NBA and Major League Baseball are looking to expand. But baseball has, 4, 5, or 6, serious contenders for a new team, and Utah very much trying to be one of them, but kind of all that wrapped up in this article from The Athletic about the growth of sports in the state.
Yeah, the headline was How Salt Lake City Evolved into a Sports Boom Town and MLB Expansion Frontrunner. Stephen Nesbitt was the reporter on this. It's an interesting story, just kind of going through the history, like you just detailed, how Utah has kind of evolved here especially over the last 5 to 10 years, and kind of what's still on the horizon. And the difference is with the Millers, what they're trying to do is, there are other cities that would like a Major League Baseball franchise, like Nashville or Portland or a couple other cities out there. They have like nice slide decks with renderings that look nice. But Salt Lake is actually, and the Millers are actually breaking ground. Like they are clearing the ground to make it ready to welcome an NBA or a Major League Baseball franchise as soon as that becomes available. And so it's an interesting article, not only just kind of highlighting kind of how they're working forward on this to put themselves in the best possible position, but generally how sports has evolved in the state of Utah over the last little while. And, you know, there is a reference in there in the article, I think it's from Steve Starks, who's like, yeah, there's that other league we'd like to get here someday. And it's kind of a wink and a smile at maybe the NFL. But, you know, looking at the state of professional sports in Utah, like there's been a lot that's happened recently. You've got some development that's gone on at the Delta Center to make it more friendly for hockey, but also doing some things to improve the facility for basketball as well. The Olympics will be coming back here in about 8 years. So I guess the question about this article that I would pose to you and to the audience is, okay, things are going pretty well. Certainly the Jazz are hoping to get some things turned around and become more exciting again. Real Salt Lake has changed ownership here. I wonder if that's going to help them move forward or not. I don't know. I guess there's some debate on that with who the ownership is. But like, what more would you like to see? Is there more to be seen? I mean, there are other fringe sports too, and they don't like being called fringe sports, but I think there's a professional lacrosse team. I think there's a rugby team. There is women's soccer. I mean, there are other sports that are happening in the state. They may not get the same profile that some of these others do, but is there more to come, or is Utah maybe starting to cap out a little bit about what it can handle based on its population?
Yeah, I think Major League Baseball, if it does end up in Utah, will probably be the last major professional team that they'll get, at least in my lifetime. NFL's not coming to Utah. It's not happening. The NFL is not looking at expanding anytime soon.
And if they are, they're looking at Mexico City, London, Munich, Berlin.
Yeah, they're more likely
Paris.
They're more likely to expand into Europe, which, mind you, I think that would be a dumb idea, expanding into Europe. One-off games work there, full seasons, no. But who knows? I'm not getting paid millions of dollars to be Roger Goodell. But yeah, like Major League Baseball would be the last major sport. Sure, you have the rugby, and maybe an arena football team will come back here someday. Ultimate Frisbee, lacrosse, volleyball, all these different smaller leagues. To see, even a new professional softball league. Fine, some of those could maybe find a home here in Utah. Those leagues will probably always struggle with profitability, but I ain't got nothing wrong with sports being here in Utah. But as far as your major professional sports, I'll be honest, I'm not even sure a baseball team could thrive here. Not that they wouldn't have some dedicated fans, but you need just a lot of people. Like, you need a lot of people to put butts in seats. You need a lot of people to spend a lot of money on that. And those people are already, a lot of those people who were sports fans, a lot of them are already focused on the Jazz and now are getting into the Mammoth. And I just don't think that there's enough people to really make a thriving Major League Baseball team, at least to have a thriving financial base. I think you could have a good fan base, but like having one that makes you a ton of money as a professional franchise, I don't think that is necessarily there. And that combines with my worry of the Millers as owners of a Major League Baseball team. I don't necessarily have a ton of evidence for this. I can't say this definitively, so I want to put that out there before I say this, but I do not necessarily believe that the Millers would make a good baseball ownership group as far as putting the investment in for a championship level baseball team. Now, there's other things you got to worry about with being able to build a championship level baseball team, because the Dodgers can go spend $2 billion a year and just buy a championship level roster
Right.
and flip a coin as to whether or not they're going to win the World Series.
Yeah.
Nobody can keep up with that. And so that is something that baseball is going to have to address. Honestly, there's a world, we were kind of having this, going back and forth about this really today. Honestly, it's possible that Utah gets a Major League Baseball team because the league goes on strike and needs to expand to inject some cash in from expansion fees.
Yeah.
That may be how Utah gets a team, is the Millers may buy into the league to help mitigate what everyone seems to be assuming is going to be a strike, a labor strike here. So we'll see how it goes. But I'm worried about the Millers being able to spend enough money. I'm worried they're going to be one of those cheap owners that never puts out a competitive product and is just trying to milk money because, owning a sports franchise is the best investment you can have in America. It prints money. Like, it's better than any stock. It's better than anything. You buy into a sports team. It's why athletes and everyone with any amount of money is sprinting to any possible investment into a sports franchise.
Yeah.
Like the NWSL is built on a bunch of people who are wanting to own a bunch of sports franchises, and they believe there's growth there. Whether or not they're right or wrong, I'm not going to speculate there, but they're investing a ton of money. WNBA is saying the same thing. You have these athletes, and they'll say, I'm investing in the future of women's sports and all that. No, you're investing in what you think will be a money-making opportunity.
You're trying to buy low and sell high.
And you have these really mega rich people that are trying to buy franchises. The family behind Walmart went and bought the Broncos as if they didn't have enough money. But owning the Broncos is in some ways a better investment than owning Walmart. Probably not that extreme, but seriously, it makes a ton of money.
Yeah, well, the thing about baseball is that, and I think there are some valid points there about, will the Millers be an ownership group willing to spend at a level to have a competitive team? I think that's a fair question to ask.
Because they're not like they're.
But as far as it being a franchise that will, to some degree, have some success among fans, baseball has among the lowest price of entry to get in and enjoy a professional event. You can get seats now, maybe out in center field, but seats that are affordable to get a family in to enjoy a professional game. Whereas going to a hockey game or a jazz game are really expensive, and it's hard to go to very many of those games. Plus, you have a volume of games where you're hosting so many games at your arena. So the barrier of entry is a lot lower for the average fan to get to a professional experience with Major League Baseball than most others. So for that, I think there are a lot of people that will be excited about it.
I'm not.
There's also what's their track record with the Bees? They moved them, they built a new stadium, and was supposed to have a little bit better control. But what they've done instead is yes, we own the field, we own the arena, and we're going to own the ticket prices too. And it's expensive to get even to a minor league baseball game.
Yeah, that's where I'm not confident that it's going to have that lower cost, because part of that is you have these really old baseball teams that are kind of able to afford having those low ticket prices. It's really cheap to get into some of these old venues, just because they've owned them forever, and they don't have to charge a ton of money to make money off of that. It costs in some areas of the I forget what their stadium is called, but there are tickets that are more expensive for a Bees game than for actual Major League Baseball games. And you're telling me that's going to be the cheap barrier to barrier of entry? I forgot the phrase you used.
Price of entry.
Price of entry. I was getting all mixed up there. Is that going to be the cheap price of entry? The team you can get into Cubs games easier than you can into a Bees game. That's ridiculous.
Comparative seats?
Not necessarily across the board comparative seats, but
because that would shock me. But
there are literally some places it may not be the Cubs specifically, but I went and looked this up to find, if you go the cheapest of the cheap seats, the Bees are going to be cheaper, but to get decent seats at a Bees game can be cheaper, or more expensive than half decent seats in a Major League Baseball game. And, a lot of that comes down to they just built a new stadium. They're trying to milk money out of the community. They thought they were moving to a supposedly richer area, and they're trying to price gouge them so they can recoup the cost of the arena, the stadium. But that's going to be the case in their still taxpayer-funded, palace over in the Power District or whatever.
Yeah, they're getting almost $1 billion tax incentive.
Yeah, because people's taxes will pay for it, which is a problem in and of itself. Before getting too political, but then they're still going to try and recoup some of the costs that they have to sink into it. Because again, the Millers obviously they're rich, but they're not like mega rich.
Right.
And so they're leaning a lot on loans and different things like that, in putting a lot of their capital against these loans to be able to fund all this. And they're going to try and drain that out of everyone. So it's not going to be cheap, and they're not going to have a whole lot of money to invest in the team. So that's why I'm kind of afraid of Utah getting a baseball team. Because I don't think it will be a positive experience for the community, because you're going to have cheap owners who don't have a whole lot of liquid cash to invest into the team, and it's not going to be this cheap day at the park. Based on the track record that we have, the Millers ruined a cheap day at the park that we had by moving the Bees.
A number of texts rolling through on this.
We got to take a break, though.
Okay, we'll take a break, and then we'll get to some of these texts coming in. If you want to weigh in, love to hear from you as well. 435-339-0321.
Cache Valley's largest and most complete power sports service shop is now open at Young Power Sports Logan. They service all brands, all makes, all sizes, motorcycles, ATVs, UTVs, and more. No guesswork, no shortcuts, just trained technicians who fix it right the first time. They got Can-Am, Kawasaki, Polaris, Ski-Doo. They handle them all. In and out, done right, guaranteed. Pickup and delivery is available within a 25-mile radius. Get back on the road, the trail, or the track fast, and schedule your service now at 755-7111. That's Young Power Sports Logan Service Department. Call 755-7111. They sponsor our Young Power Sports Logan text line. We have a few texts rolling in. 9-5, we ignored this text about all show. Asking if we want to have Bronco Mendenhall and the coach of the rodeo team on the show. And
I think they just recently had an event here recently where they did some end of year honors and recognitions, and Bronco was there and talked about involving the rodeo team and getting the horses out on the field. And he's talked about that in our press conferences before. It's really cool how he's connected Utah State to its agricultural roots for the football. And of course, you had the battle cattle helmets.
There's also a video of him lassoing, some of the cattle.
Yeah, that's true. They shared that last week.
So it's not just him riding a horse around. He's getting in on the action.
Yeah, he was showing what he's capable of. Yeah.
Then also 935 saying the new professional sport to come to Utah, will it flood the market? And he linked to a video of cheese rolling where they roll a wheel of cheese down the hill, and a bunch of idiots basically threw themselves down the hill in a way that made me legitimately worried that someone came out of there without the ability to walk anymore.
Yeah, chasing after it.
It was uncomfortable watching that many people bounce off the ground.
It's popular in England somewhere in the UK.
He did some weird things in Europe where there's videos of people literally a sport where they kick each other in the shins. They stuff hay in their pants. Obviously from the knee to the ankle.
No, thank you.
And then they kick each other in the shins.
4781 Pro Ultimate Frisbee is already in Utah. May have heard you wrong, but it sounded like you didn't know.
Yeah, I can't remember how I worded it, but I think it was the uncertain of they may or may not be here. My impression has been that Utah has been kind of a hub of Ultimate Frisbee. So if you'd have told me they had one, it might have rung a bell somewhere in the back of my head. 8739 saying, correct me if I'm wrong, but did the Ultimate Frisbee team win a title last year? And that I wouldn't know.
I wouldn't know.
I wouldn't.
Congrats if they did.
Saying the Salt Lake Shred. Oh, no, they did not win. 4781 following it up. So, no, they did not win.
I'm glad we could get you two together.
That's it. So they were runner-ups 2 years ago. So so like I said, you got some pro teams
competing.
And some I think the rugby team might have won their league course. Then I think they might have gone defunct. I can't remember.
I don't know.
Like I said, you can have good teams. Like Utah had a half decent arena. They had a half decent arena football league, and then that ended up either going defunct or moving or something like that.
5860. I went to the Mammoth versus Stars game a few weeks back, and it was only like 50% full. I was shocked. Stars were really good at the time, and I thought for sure it would be packed. With ticket prices being so high, the number of people in Utah willing to buy them and support another team, I just doubt the attendance would be good for another pro team. We have less people in the whole state than exist in the Dallas or any other big city metro area that support more than one team. There's some truth to that. However, it's on a different schedule. So you've got hockey and basketball that are right on top of each other. They're sharing the venue. Their schedules are right on top of each other. So sometimes people do have to make a choice to want to go to that team or the other. I can't do both. But with baseball, it's like when they wind down, baseball picks up. And when baseball winds down, they pick up. So they're really on opposite ends of their calendars. So baseball doesn't really compete against the NBA and the NHL.
Though still, it may not conflict schedule-wise, but it might conflict with budgets.
Right. Yeah, still, budgets, the dollar is the same.
Because the number of people
you don't
may
magically
not change.
get new dollars just because the season's out of whack.
So, yeah, that may be the trick there. From 4781, still following up on the Ultimate Frisbee team, saying they have 6 players from Cache Valley. It's like, yeah, there's some dang good players in Cache Valley for Ultimate Frisbee. Got players on like the national teams.
Yeah, we've had some of them in here. Some of our local high school players were on a team that went to a national level and competed, and I think they won.
Going playing in college. Yeah, there's some pretty good Cache Valley Ultimate Frisbee players. 5338 saying, I believe Utah also has a professional lacrosse team which won a championship in the last couple of years, I believe. Maybe that's what I was thinking of instead of rugby, or maybe both. I knew there was like a rugby team because somebody brought it up to my attention. Maybe one of the texters that brought it to my attention in a previous show way back when. But Utah's got some of these, again, you can call them lower level or, pro leagues. Like, there's a lot of fun sports you can watch as long as you can catch them. They used to have a nice racetrack that they would run, races at. I mean, technically they still do, but it's like American Porsche Cup or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
It was the old like Larry Miller Sports Park. It's called something else now.
Yeah,
I don't know
they
what
sold
it's called.
To somebody else, but it was it's supposed to be great for like motorcycles and a few other different types of cars.
Yeah, it doesn't run nearly as many races as it used to.
No.
It barely runs any.
The Tooele area,
Yeah, so maybe someday I'll go catch a Porsche Cup. But we'll see if they're still running those races. We got to take another break. When we come back, we're going to do hot take or not a take here on the Full Court Press. Welcome back to the Full Court Press. We begin to wrap things up here on 106.9 FM, 1390 AM The Fan. Streaming online at 1069thefan.com, the 1069 The Fan mobile app, and on YouTube at The Fan KLGN. That's where you can find us and watch video of us yell at each other about sports. Not so much yell. Neither of us really yell that much. 533 on the Young Power Sports Logan text line as we follow up on a couple of things from the last segment, talking about other pro sports teams in the state other than your major sports ones, your NBAs, NHLs, and kind of MLS. They're like half a major league. That's kind of there. And maybe getting a Major League Baseball team. But 5338 saying, I've also heard that indoor football is coming back to Utah. You guys have the scoop on that? And specifying that he means arena-style football. Because, they used to have the Utah Blaze. They either moved or went defunct. And I was surprised that league even still exists.
I don't know where you'd put them because Delta Center's...
Is that where they played?
Yeah.
I don't even remember where they played because, again, you have a 50-yard field, essentially.
In the Delta Center.
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't know if you put them in the Maverick Center because Delta Center's got too much going on right now.
Yeah.
Besides the two professional teams, they also have renovations that are still going on.
Yeah. Well, let's finish up the show here with the hottest game show in sports radio, and that is Hot Take or Not a Take.
San Diego State has run the conference.
Yeah. I actually kind of almost half made it that one. But for those of you who don't know, I go out and I peruse the internet and I find a hot take or I make one up. And if I find a hot take, I have to get it from someone at least with a decent sized following, journalist, or even a citizen journalist, whatever you want to call them, independent content creator, just somebody with some following. I'm not just going to find some random on Twitter and pull this from. And it's either a hot take that I found or not a take, one that I just made up. So, Eric, how about this one? Someone online, it was a large, actually, NFL social media account, said that Connor McDavid, the star for the Canadian national team, is basically the Josh Allen of hockey. Citing how Connor McDavid, I think, is now 0-2 in the Stanley Cup Finals, lost the gold medal game against the U.S. with apparently one of the best teams in a long while, one of the best teams ever formed in international hockey, among other things, where it's Connor McDavid, clearly a very, very, very talented player.
Very talented player, but doesn't have the rings to show for it.
Yeah, just not winning. He does have a Four Nations face-off win, if that, basically an all-star game victory.
I'm going to say that's a hot take. I will believe that is in fact, a take that somebody has thrown out there.
It is indeed. I think it was like Bears Show Yo or something like that. It's a Bears fan Twitter account, but it has like 20,000 followers. The take was then picked up by FanDuel and amplified it through their platform of degenerate gamblers. But yeah, that was a take that was circulating around social media, along with all of the incredibly salty Canadian fans. Enough salt from Canada to melt all of the ice rinks in Canada. The amount of people saying, well, Canada was the better team. Like, literally had people saying, one, smug looking Canadian being like 40 shots on goal to 20 shots on goal. It was like, and how many
scoreboard?
Goals? Scoreboard.
All that matters.
The big number is the number of goals you have. The smaller number next to it is how many shots took.
What's the color of your medal versus the color of ours?
Silver shines bright, but gold's a little bit brighter in that case. So
what a cool weekend for the women to win it, the men to win it, both of them going overtime against Canada. Beautiful. What a great Olympics for Team USA.
The Americans own hockey now. That's going to do it for us here on the Full Court Press. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to check us out on our podcast feed and on YouTube at The Fan KLGN.